Welcome to the Baluch podcast, Arnav. Please introduce yourself.
Hey everyone, my name is Arnav Gupta. I currently work at Slashy YCS25 company. I do marketing, GTM, and growth here. And yeah, I'm pretty new to San Francisco. I just moved out here 5 months ago, and it's been great, enjoying everything about it. Yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Okay, so the first question I have is like your previous interest was in medicine. What inspired that interest?
Yeah, from a young age, I have always been inspired to help people and to create an impact on the world. And at the time, I believed that my best way to do that was through medicine, and I was very committed to that. I started my medical rotations and volunteering, just doing different extracurriculars and stuff throughout high school. And then even in college, I worked very hard to pursue my potential of being a doctor. And eventually, I realized that was not the path for me. But while it lasted, I was very dedicated towards being a doctor since I knew the great impact that doctors and medical professionals have on the world, and I still hold great respect for them.
Okay, thanks. So your journey began like as a young child, right?
Mhm.
So you always wanted to know you wanted to go into medicine, or did that passion like develop slowly over time or increased over time?
Yeah, I think it developed very slowly over time. As a very, very young kid, I didn't really fully know what I wanted to do. I was juggling between things like software engineer, content creator, YouTuber. Medicine was there a little bit. I also wanted to do engineering, robotics. And I kind of combined all of that into biomedical engineering. And that was my dream for a very long time. And then when I entered high school, I realized that biomedical engineering was not very favorable for the future, especially at the time, since there were not a lot of jobs or a lot of research opportunities available for me as a high schooler. And in the future, um, I think now it's safe to say that biomedical engineering is a very promising field, especially with all the biotech startups and all the biotech that's coming out now. But I think at the time, it just was not as promising, and I just did not feel like it would be worth it to pursue both engineering and medicine, since that's what biomedical engineering is. You combining two different streams.
Mm.
And because of that, I decided to pick the stream that I liked the most out of those two, which was medicine. And I thought that I could pursue medicine for the longest and have the greatest stamina in continuing excelling in my career. And that's kind of why I picked medicine long term. And even then, I believe that I could have very strong impact through medicine. And so it wasn't just like a very ill-fated decision. It was more of a well thought out decision, carefully picking which passions I wanted to pursue long term.
Okay, so now moving on from like the medicine area, you mentioned that you work at a company called Slashly. What was the path that led you to work there?
Yeah, that's an interesting story, actually. So I was at home and I was scrolling on LinkedIn, and one day I saw Harsha. I saw his post on LinkedIn saying, "Hey, I released a new product called Slashy. I would love for you guys to try it out." So I clicked on it, I signed up, I started messing around with it, and I really liked it, but I stopped using it for a little while. I believe it was a day later, I get an email in my inbox saying, "Hey, we'd love for your feedback on Slashy." Um, I just decided not to respond to it. The next day, I get another one, and then another one, and then another one. Finally, I decided to respond, and I respond with my feedback saying, "Hey, this is what I liked about the product. This is what I didn't like." And at the time, I was doing a social media marketing agency, and so I would create assets, videos, photos, logos, and stuff for companies in my area, businesses, restaurants. And I would get them incentivized to work with me by sending them something free. Since most people don't want to do work for free, I would send them something for free so that way they could see if they were happy with my work or not, and they'd be more incentivized to respond to me. And that got me a lot more inbound since I was actually the one taking the action and I was doing something out of the ordinary when approaching my inbound. So I sent him some assets, and Harsha said, "Wow, I really appreciate that you took time out of your day and sent me some free assets. Let's do an interview." We had an interview, we had a work trial, and now I'm here full time.
So what do you do there currently?
Yeah, so I do marketing, growth, GTM. So that does not really have a set list of requirements in my contract, actually. But essentially, it involves everything from making content, making the front of the website, to top of the funnel, outreach, emails. SEO, newsletter, anything I would say non-technical, you name it, I'm there.
Okay. And I was curious, like, what have you learned from working in like such a good startup,
Yeah,
kind of?
I learned definitely how to move fast, ship fast, execute fast, learn fast, fail fast. Speed is a very big thing when it comes to startups because you are essentially working against the clock at all times. You have to make sure that you meet your metrics for the next round and that you don't run out of money before then. And the faster you fail, the more data points you have to learn from, and that way you can execute better. So instead of lingering on one plan for too long, it's better to just push it out there, see what happens, and then learn from the mistakes. From that, then you can come back with a better plan, a stronger approach, and you will have more success in the long term. And I think that's a good way to approach life as well. You're better off taking action than just thinking and sitting on your hands.
Okay. And you had mentioned like you had previously been admitted to medical school. How did you
Mhm.
prepare for that?
Yeah, so a couple schools in the United States do something called a BSMD program, and
Mm.
that allows you conditional acceptance to medical school upon completing your undergraduate degree or a set of specific requirements to that school. And so my school from Alabama, I'm from Alabama,
Yeah.
and one of the schools there called UAB, they also have a BSMD program. And I applied there. And in order to get into that program, you not only have to show your dedication to the field of medicine, and to do that, you would have to do things like shadowing, volunteering, research projects, potentially science Olympiads, having a very strong ACT, SAT, GPA, showing your medical initiative, and just showing that you're a high achiever. But you also have to pass um, a medical sort of assessment where
Mm.
they do flash speed interviews with multiple medical professionals in a short burst of 20 minutes. And after that, they will have a long interview with you. So you speak to someone for about 45 minutes, and they basically grill you about your past, why you wanted to do medicine, what inspired you to continue this journey, how do you know you're not going to quit, things like that. And as long as you show your commitment and as long as you have enough conviction in yourself that you will continue to do medicine, then you'll be accepted.
Okay, and I was curious, what advice would you give to students aiming for med school?
Yeah, I would say know exactly why you're doing it, know where you want to be, set a goal for yourself, even if that does not end up and even sorry, even if that does not end up becoming the goal that is realized at the end of the day, you should still set a goal for yourself because you have something to work towards. So you really need to understand why you're doing the medicine, what you want out of it, what sort of impact you want to bring. And then once you understand those three components, you can really work your way top down and build out a pathway that suits you. And instead of doing something that everyone else does, like just doing regular volunteering or shadowing, you should pick certain areas or fields that really interest you. So that way, when you talk about it in an interview or on an essay portion, you can really dive deep onto why, hey, I picked the emergency department. Hey, this is why I picked the cancer center over something like the biomedical engineering department or something like the scanning room. Just different sort of niche things that you can implement into your essay to or interview to make you stand out as an applicant.
Okay, so like for medicine, some extracurriculars involve like research projects, and you had done a research project yourself. Can you share more about that research?
Yeah, so I did a research project in college. That project was taking stem cells and differentiating them into an inner olfactory epithelial cells. So that would be the inner cells of your nose right here. And those are the cells that are used to detect scent as well as other functions as well. And because it is theorized that these cells regenerate quite quickly and they grow back, you were able to actually grow the entire organ. And that was kind of the basis of the entire research project. And so using research from growing other cells in different areas like the ear and the eye, we were able to get make some progress on this project. And yeah, it was a very difficult project. It was a master's PhD level project given to an undergraduate, but I think it was fun. It was a good thing that I was able to start on it and continue it for 6 months. And I'm very, very glad I did it, even if there were multiple rough days. I pulled so many all-nighters, very unhealthy sleep schedule, but I think looking back, I would not have changed one thing about it.
And I'm curious, what drew you to it?
Yeah, so I at the time was looking for re or professors to do research projects with.
Mm.
And I went to a research fair and I was talking to a couple of professors, and one of the professors stood out to me because he was taking on some very, very interesting projects. These projects range from genetics, neuroscience, um, stem cell replication, just lots of interesting stuff. So I decided to contact him, and he did an interview with me, and he really liked how I was in the BSMD program and how I was very committed to making an impact through medicine. And so after the interview, I was accepted into his lab, and he introduced me to 4 or 5 different projects that he said I could be a part of. And after looking at all of these projects, only one stood out to me. And the reason that that specific stem cell differentiation project stood out to me was because not only was it the most interesting, but it was because it was the most challenging. I didn't want to take on a project that it seemed like any undergraduate student can do because that would not only make me look normal, but I wanted to challenge myself and I wanted to prove that, hey, I could do something very difficult and I would be up for the challenge. And because I believe I have a lot of determination and willpower, um, I thought that I could see through the end of the project as long as I was pursuing medicine. And so I told him that I wanted to take on the hardest project, the most interesting project, because maybe I won't finish it during my undergraduate years, but I still want to create a huge impact on the world. And
Yeah.
taking on the most challenging problems is the only way to create an impact in the
Yeah.
world.
Okay. And you have had like experience with TEDx. How did that come about?
So in the summer of, I believe, 2024, I saw a flyer while I was walking back to my dormitory
Yeah.
on one of the poles, and it was an advertisement for TEDx. And I had thought that TED was such a hard thing to get into because you see all these big names on the YouTube, the professors, the Nobel Prize winners, the YouTubers, the celebrities, the
Yeah.
politicians, all of these guys, huge guys, are speaking on the TED stage. And I thought, wow, this is an opportunity to be part of a leadership team that could potentially have some of these people speaking on it. And so I scanned the code, I applied, and next week I got an interview, and next thing you know, I'm executive producer of TEDx UAB. So it was a cool experience. I got to mentor a lot of great professionals in different careers, as well as students and professors, doctors. And I also got to screen a bunch of candidates, prepare the venue, do a lot of logistical work. So overall, it was a good experience. I highly enjoyed it.
Okay. What did you learn about communicating like from the experience?
Yeah, so I
So,
learned how to cater to different people's learning styles. Everyone
yeah.
learns in a different way. Everyone speaks in a different way.
Yep.
It takes different people, different times to memorize things, or different ways to learn certain ways on how to speak. And so every speaker, you had to almost give them a customized plan of action on how to perform well on the actual day of performance, right?
Yeah.
So it's not easy doing this because you have to talk to each person and thoroughly understand why they say certain things, how they say certain things,
Yeah.
how to make sure that they don't say the wrong thing or they
Yeah.
don't mess up on stage, right? So it,
Yeah.
it takes a lot of time and effort. And it's the same in acting too, because when you're an actor, you don't necessarily learn the same as everyone else on stage or in the production. So it's very important to almost see these kinds of things as you're talking to a bunch of actors on stage and you're kind of helping them memorize their lines. So you wanted to implement certain techniques from acting and stuff like that. And it's a good experience in learning how not to just communicate from a self-learning standpoint, but on
Yeah.
how to communicate with others so that they are able to thoroughly understand what you're saying and how to make sure that they are able to um, properly communicate what they intend to say.
Yeah, that must have been a really interesting experience. So, I was curious, like what qualities do you think like have been most important to success across multiple areas, like your research and your speaking?
I would say the one trait, if any trait you should have, regardless of which career path you pick,
Mm.
is determination. I say that because determination, willpower, discipline, these things have gotten me through a lot of terrible, terrible times. And especially when it comes to switching career paths, it becomes very difficult mentally, physically, emotionally. And you need to have strength and power in yourself, as well as determination not to give up and to continue moving forward. If you maybe are the smartest person in, if you are the smartest person in the world, but you don't have enough determination to do anything, what does that give you?
Yeah.
You're not able to use that power correctly. Versus if you have determination, even if you aren't the best and the brightest in one field, as long as you continue moving forward, learning, growing, adapting, you are able to become a stronger person than you were before. And determination is the cornerstone of improvement in any aspect of life. So having that one aspect allows you to develop a set of characteristics that are contingent with someone who is able to succeed in any field and do well in whatever they want.
Okay. And finally, you have mentioned like making an impact a lot of times right now. What advice would you give to young people like who dream of making an impact kind of, but don't know where to start?
Hmm. That's a really good question. Yeah. So I would say start with what you like. What do you enjoy? What do
Yeah.
you find yourself doing when you're bored, when you don't have anything to do, when you have too much time on your hands? And even something as simple as playing video games can be turned into something excellent or extraordinary, right? I was very convinced for a long time that I would be a pro gamer or a YouTuber.
Mm.
And at the time, all I did was make YouTube videos. I would play in these Super Smash Bros. Ultimate tournaments at my local college. I would play against my friends. I would play online, and I would win money, lose some money. But I was very determined to become this pro gamer. And later on in my life, I was very glad actually that I had this experience in pro gaming and content creation because I was able to use these skills I learned in actually Slashy right now because I know how to take something that may be inherently boring and reframe it into content that is very interesting. Because all video creation is
Yeah.
taking raw footage and turning it into something that people like or people find interesting. And obviously that differs from which genre or which type of footage that you have, but in essence it's the same, right? So being able to take that translatable skill is something that can be applied to literally any field or anything that you enjoy. Even as something as common as playing video games can turn into a career path in an indirect way. So I would start with what do you enjoy the most and try and excel in that one area. Take it as far as you can, and maybe you don't reach your goal. Fine. But you've come a long way and you've made a lot of progress. Now what? What are the adjacent fields that you could maybe branch into, right?
Yeah.
You can start working in that areas and you'll find that you actually enjoy some of these things because they share a lot of similar traits. And as you keep working and building yourself into these different areas that maybe you didn't think were possible or existed, or you may not have enjoyed at first, you'll find yourself start to enjoy them slowly but surely because of the exposure effect. You're doing it every day. And I think that that's one really easy way to make a great impact on the world when you have absolutely zero idea where to start.
Those are all the questions for today. Thanks for coming on
Okay,
the Village podcast.
thank you so much. I really appreciate it.